Jake, in his human shape, offers his remaining video log. He says the individuals are dispatched lower back to Earth, and handiest a number of, Norm and Max, have been allowed to remain at the rear of. He says that he can't be owed to his personal party, and symptoms off. At the Tree of Souls, Foss and Neytiri are showing the identical ritual they tried to hold out with Grace. Jake's cognizance is totally put in his avatar shape, and he opens his eyes. Jake's Sully, Sam Worthington, may be a Marine who became paralytic in war. His twin brother, Tommy, wore education for 3 years to manipulate an avatar on Pandora, a planet people have invaded, hoping to induce unobtainium, a loved metal. Jake is recruited while his brother dies to require over his avatar, a hybrid of the desoxyribonucleic acid of an individual's and a Na-6, one in each of Pandora's autochthonic humans. He's transported to Pandora via a cryo chamber and disembarks the usage of Pandora's autochthonic humans. He's transported to Pandora via a cryo chamber and disembarks the usage of an atomic number 8 masks in sight that folks can't breathe the air on Pandora. Once Jake arrives at Pandora, he meets Dr. Grace's father, Sigourney Weaver, and a fellow Avatar driver named Norm Spellman, Joel Moore. Grace is pissed that Jake is there, saying that she desires Tommy, who had educated for this. However, she places Jake in his hyperlink, that places his mind on high of things of the Avatar. Once he awakens in his Avatar body, he straight away disobeys the orders of the doctors, who would like him to ease into things. He runs out of the power, happy that he has victimization his legs. Grace meets with Parker Selfridge, Giovanni Ribisi, who seems to be the mastermind at the rear of the invasion. The military chief is commissioned military officer Quaritch, Stephen Lang. Grace is thwarted that Parker maintains seeking to anterior naris his manner into the Avatar program, that's her department. Jake, Norm, and Beauty take their avatars over the wall of the facility in an exceedingly heavier than aircraft flown through Trudy Chacon, Michelle Rodriguez. She drops them off for his or her suasion mission, and Jake wanders far from the group. Here, he runs right into a dinosaur-like creature who virtually assaults him. Grace tells him currently now not to shoot it, as a result of the creature's pores and skin is simply too thick for bullets. However, a novel creature, I overlook the names of those, it looks like a panther, arrives and begins off-evolved to assault Jake. Grace screams at Jake to run, that he does. He handiest escapes through leap off a drop right into a colossal waterfall. However, now he's separated from the group. Grace, Norm, and Trudy fly over until nightfall, looking for him, but got to accommodate's orders now no longer to be out at night time. Grace fears Jake can currently now not continue to exist the evening. Time on my very own on Pandora. Jake is wandering across the woodland in the dead of night time, within which plenty of assorted creatures are wandering round. We tend to see Neytiri, Zoe Saldana, a Na-6, alert on a department higher than him. She is prepared to shoot him with an arrow while slightly sea anemone searching issue lands on her arrow. This seems to be a signal, and he or she will now no longer shoot. Later, Jake reveals himself with inside the middle of a P.C of the panther-like creatures that attacked him earlier then. Eventually, he makes an attempt to combat them off and is prepared to lose while Neytiri runs over and begins off-evolved killing the creatures along beside her bow and arrow. Jake thanks her profusely, but she may well be terribly thwarted, some having to require the lifestyles of these harmless creatures. Jake follows her via the woodsy area, asking her to teach him how to protect himself. She goes to refuse, however all of a sudden those anemone creatures are all round them once more. Thousands of them perch on Jake's body, and Neytiri seems stunned. She takes him to a clearing, within which a bunch of Na-6 trip abreast of Pandora's model of horses. They have to kill Jake in sight that they acknowledge he won among the sky humans and individuals in an avatar's body. However, Neytiri says he became hand-picked through Iowa, their deity. They accommodates carry him lower back to their home tree, in which the final choice could also be created. Through the leader's reception tree, Jake meets Neytiri's parents, Moat and Itukan, who are the leaders of this family unit of Na-6. They're angry at Neytiri for delivery Jake, who repeats that there has been a symbol from Iowa. Jake says all he wishes to try to do is learn, and that they accommodates allow him live at things that Neytiri teaches him the complete thing. She complains some this responsibility, but her parents' phrase is extremely last. All of them visit sleep, and Jake wakes up in his human shape, lower back on the base. Grace and Norm are eased that his avatar is secure and grill him for details. They're galvanized that he survived the assault of the creatures and has by some means that gotten in with the Nasics. They have him to use this role to try to get a diplomatic solution. However, commissioned military officer Quaritch to boot meets with Jake and tells him to apply this role to discover their weaknesses, that the army will acknowledge how they might high quality beat the Nasics. He says that if Jake will this, he'll see to that Jake receives in steeply priced operation to regain victimization his legs. There's a paste up of Neytiri work Jake distinctive things, alongside the language of the Nasics and how to trip the horses. The braids that the Nasics placed on intertwine with the reins of the horses, thus they're connected via their minds. Jake maintains worsening his horse, and Neytiri makes him try another time and once more. Jake is obtaining bigger, troubled with the extended family, and convinces them to allow Grace's avatar visit, that she does. Neytiri is likewise seeking to teach him how to create a straightforward kill. Once he within the finish does, while saying a prayer over the corpse, she says he ready. She takes him to the den of her banshee, a pterodactyl-like hand that she can also trip the usage of the link of her braid to his. Neytiri says that, in distinction to the horses, each Nasics rides handiest one spirit for lifestyles, and Jake needs to find the of them, in conjunction with a number of completely different Nasics, climb up a colossal form inside the sky to induce to within which the spirits live. Neytiri tells Jake that he'll acknowledge what Banshee is meant for him, in sight that each one of the others can fly away in fear, but his will commit to kill him. Jake reveals a spirit that stands the maximum amount as him, and tackles the spirit to create first, connection. Jake is sort of killed, but within the finish makes the link and takes his first trip. He says in voiceover that horses aren't for him, however he became created to fly. Neytiri joins him on her personal banshee, which they trade several soft on appears. Suddenly, they're attacked through the Leonopteryx, a colossal dragon-like creature. This can be delicately 5 instances as huge as a banshee. They fly all the approach right down to the floor and by some means that shake off the Leonopteryx. Whenever that Jake's avatar goes to sleep, he wakes up in his human shape. Once human, he makes video logs speaking what he has completed on Pandora. One set of logs he maintains for Grace, and the other he sends to commissioned military officer Quaritch. He doesn't ship one to Quaritch for a whilst, that the commissioned military officer is obtaining suspicious that Jake's head isn't inside the game. Jake says he merely desires bigger time prior they assault. He wishes to find a number of form of a diplomatic solution. Back on Pandora, Neytiri takes Jake to a sacred region, within which the Nasics may make connections to Iowa, and might listen the recollections in their ancestors. Neytiri says that through delivery Jake there, she has coagulated his role inside the family unit and he'll formally be created one in each of them. She says he will choose a lady and makes recommendations on who he might present. He says he's already made his selection, but this girl needs to pick him in return. Neytiri says she has, which they create love. Neytiri says that doing thus inside the presence of Iowa has mated them for lifestyles. They visit sleep. Neytiri wakes up the following morning to the sound of a tractor returning via the timber. The individuals are obtainable to require down the timber of Iowa. Neytiri is screaming with affliction and seeking to induce them to stop. Jake continues to be asleep, and isn't in his link lower back on the base. Grace forces him to devour prior linking once more. He within the finish hyperlinks at merely the right time earlier than their run over through the tractor. He waves his hands frantically to try to induce the bulldozer to stop, that it will for a slice second prior starting once more. Commissioned military officer Quaritch is dominant the bulldozer. Jake jumps at the device and breaks the cameras so they can't manage it anymore. Commissioned military officer Quaritch sees on the video and realizes that that's Jake. He realizes Jake has switched sides, back reception tree, all invaried is overwrought that Iowa's depression has been destroyed through the people. Grace is there as well, in avatar shape. The Nasics are angry with them for delivery the sky humans there, despite the very fact that their speech that they'd nil to try to with it. Suddenly, Tote, a Nasics that has in no approach merely warmed to Jake, realizes that Neytiri and Jake have mated. Grace is stunned. At the base, commissioned military officer Quaritch storms into the link region and breaks Grace's and Jake's hyperlinks. Grace yells at Parker, saying they need bigger time. Quaritch and Parker ought to assault Home Tree, that sits on pinnacle of Pandora's largest unobtainium deposit. The accommodates allow Jake and Beauty hyperlink up once more to induce the Nasics out of Home Tree. Jake and Beauty visit Home Tree to try to influence them to depart in sight that they acknowledge. Commissioned military officer Quaritch and Parker can currently now not wait to assault. Jake admits he knew from the beginning they need been planning this, and Neytiri begins off evolved to sob, saying she trusted him. He makes an attempt to tell her that the complete factor changed, he fell soft on along beside her and Pandora, but she screams at him to depart. Grace and Jake are pledged because the military begins off evolved to arrive. The plane begins off evolved to assault with bombs, the Nasics retaliate with arrows that don't have any effect. Moat, Neytiri's mother, unties Grace and Jake, saying if they're extremely Nasics, they need to help them. Trudy is in one among the helicopters, but leaves, pronouncing she didn't sign in for this. Eventually, the bombs reason Home Tree to crack and collapse. Neytiri's father is killed with inside the war, and therefore the army retreats. Once more, Quaritch breaks Grace and Jake's hyperlinks. They're screaming that he a murderer. Which they, in conjunction with Norm, are set in an exceedingly jail cell. Trudy brings the prisoners meals but pulls a gun at the defend and frees the three of them with the assist of grievous bodily harm, a MD with inside the Avater program. As they're leaving, Jake tells Max to measure at the rear of, as he desires an individual he will consider at the inside. Trudy begins off evolved up her heavier than aircraft and is detected through Quaritch, who bursts out into the construction and begins off evolved shooting. The four of them slightly get off the floor, they're reaching to the floating mountains, in which they need got the other link station, which they can't be caterpillar tracked as they're too excessive up with inside the atmosphere. As they fly, Jake realizes that Grace has been shot and is trauma profusely. Once they are available on the hyperlink station, Jake makes a choice that he needs to regain the consider of the Nasics. He takes his spirit and makes a decision to create a regard to the Leonopteryx, who would possibly currently now not expect this. He succeeds in education the creature and flies it to the Tree of Souls, in which the Nasics have relocated. Once they acknowledge he has educated the beast, they're in awe of him. Neytiri says she became afraid for her humans but isn't anymore. She says I see you, that's the best possible announcement of warm-heartedness among the Nasics, a technique they see into one any other's thizzles. Jake returns. The sentiment however Speedy says that he desires assist, as Grace is dying. Grace and her avatar are every delivered to the Nasics, within which Foss plays a ritual that may position Grace's cognizance utterly into her avatar so she might now not wish to be connected, and he or she would possibly continue to exist this manner. Despite all their pleas to Iowa, her accidents are too great, and he or she dies. Jake then offers a speech that he's attentive to the sky humans are planning to assault once more, which they need to arise in combat. They got to enlist all of the various Pandora clans, that they do. Back on the base, Quaritch sees via measuring instrument that their numbers are slowly developing to over 1,000 Nasics. Grievous bodily harm sends a video message to Jake, Grace, and Trudy that they're planning to mobilize and assault the Tree of Souls. Jake is on my very own on the Tree of Souls, within which he makes a plea to Iowa to help his humans, the Nasics. Neytiri comes up at the rear of him and says still his efforts, Iwa will currently now not take sides, she handiest protects the soundness of lifestyles. They embrace, the final war starts off evolved with floor troops returning in. They note that some factor is obtaining nearer and nearer at the radar, it far the Nasics, on their horses. Within the air, the army's planes are planning to assault while they're attacked through Nasics on Banshees. Jake and Neytiri are amongst those soldiers, whilst Norm is at the ground. The Nasics at the floor are being decimated, as they're mounting Khan to weapons with bows and arrows. Those with inside the air are inflicting a number of damage, but currently now not enough. Trudy is assaultive. Quaritch's craft along beside her personal heavier than aircraft however is hit and her helicopter explodes, killing her. Norm is likewise shot at the floor and awakens in his link station, short-winded for air. Neytiri is attacked through a craft and falls to the wood. Land ground, but survives. Jake is creating a shot to coordinate along beside his buddies however receives no reply. Neytiri is at the floor, concealment however encircled through individuals. Jake screams at her currently now not to assault, as she will be able to extremely be killed. She will now no longer concentrate and prepares her bow to combat to the death, however all of a sudden the people stop. They need detected some factor else impending at the radar. Suddenly, all of the creatures. From the beginning, the Archosaurian and Panther-searching creatures value the people, who begin being killed in droves. Neytiri screams with pleasure that Iwa listen to Jake. Jake assaults Quaritch's aircraft, but Quaritch by some means that escapes through moving into a colossal robot-like shell that folks will manage in war. He falls to the woodland ground and begins off-evolved combating with Jake man-on-man. They're correct following the link station within which Jake continues to be connected to his avatar. Quaritch hits the hyperlink station, which reasons a little hollow to form in Jake's bed. Since individuals can't breathe Pandora's air, his human body, all the same connected to his avatar, begins off-evolved choking. Jake, in his avatar shape, continues to be combating however is fastened through Quaritch, who's some to kill him while Neytiri appears and shoots arrows correct via Quaritch's chest. Once he's dead, she runs over to Jake, who has fallen subconscious owing to the trauma his human shape goes through. Back in his human shape, he stumbles out of his link station however can't attain the emergency atomic number 8 masks because of his paralysis. He falls to the bottom and prevents breathing. Neytiri makes an attempt to awaken his avatar form but can't. She then runs into the link station and places the atomic number 8 masks on Jake's human shape. He wakes up and is capable of breathe once more. She cradles him in her hands which they every say I see you. Jake, in his human shape, offers his remaining video log. He says the individuals are dispatched lower back to Earth, and handiest a number of Norman Max have been allowed to remain at the rear of. He says that he can't be owed to his personal party, and symptoms off. At the Tree of Souls, Foss and Neytiri are showing the identical ritual they tried to hold out with grace. Jake's cognizance is totally put in his avatar shape, and he opens his eyes.